Afternoon. It's good to see everybody here again. I think, and I'm pretty sure we have sealed the deal. You haven't completed a warm welcome until you've had a potluck, and I really appreciate that. I really do. I know it is a handle to get up and to get ready, maybe get your kids ready, and also fix a dish while you're getting ready, and it puts some effort into the morning that wasn't there already, and I really appreciate everybody that took part in that. I know there was a crew that got here an hour before the rest of us, and I really appreciate that, and it was really a fine meal. Somebody asked me, can you preach on a full stomach? And I thought that was a pretty good question. I said, yeah, no, that's a good question. Now, can you stay awake on a full stomach? That's the better question. But I do appreciate that, and we have been very warmly welcomed. Thank you for that. We're going to be starting a series tonight, jumping right into one, on Hebrews chapter 11. So that is where we are going to be for about the next 12 weeks. I've entitled this series, Heroes, and you see quite a few heroes in this chapter of the Bible. And I was trying to think of a way to kind of get into that series. And, when I think heroes, I really think World War II especially. All of our military, our vets, you've heard it said, if you can read this, thank a teacher. If you can read it in English, thank a vet. And that is so true. We have so many men and women who serve us, and I thank you for that. But then, that greatest generation is just put forth even just a little bit more so, saved the world. I think that is the right way to put it when you think about that World War II generation. And I got to reading online, and it's actually debated who was the greatest hero, who was the most decorated hero out of that era. There's a debate going on. I didn't know this, but there's a debate among the history buffs. Some say that it was Matt Urban. Matt Urban was a man who, I believe it said he had 7 Purple Hearts. Still incredible, 7 Purple Hearts. Had a Medal of Honor. They said that not his people, but the enemy, the Nazis, gave him a nickname. They nicknamed him the Ghost. And you could just imagine 7 Purple Hearts. They kept hitting him, but then he'd show back up and he'd come back for more. 7 Purple Hearts. They said at one point in time he got injured very badly in the leg, taken to the hospital. He's sitting there in the hospital for about a month trying to recover, still not ready to get back on the battlefield yet, not ready to do much of anything yet. But he hears that his unit is not doing very well in France. And so he actually checks himself out of the hospital. They're saying, no, you can't go anywhere. He's saying, yes, I'm going. He checks himself out of the hospital, hitchhikes back to France, finds his unit, and then commands them and leads them forward into several more victories. Just a tough dude. What a hero. Some say it was Matt Urban. Some say, and you might have heard this name before, he was in quite a few motion pictures after the war, Audie Murphy. Audie Murphy was in 44 movies after the war, several depicting scenes from battles he was actually in. And he was in some westerns as well. He received his Medal of Honor at the age of 19. 19 years old, already had Medal of Honor, 3 Purple Hearts as well. They say there was one particular battle, and I believe he's been in a movie that showed this battle scene, but they said he had about 40 men with him. He was commanding 40 troops. And they were walking there across the field when all of a sudden 250 Nazis, 6 tanks come through the woods. And he tells his men, get back into defensive positions. But he stays out there on the field because he's got the radio. And so he's emptying his rifle as he's calling in artillery strikes. And they said at one point in time, they asked, how close are they? He said, hold the phone, I'll give it to one of them. He said, but he's out there and he's emptying his rifle. They said he looks over and there's a tank destroyer, one of the American vehicles there. It's been hit by fire. It is on fire. It's in flames. But he said he looked on top and the 50 cal was still intact. So he goes and he jumps on top of it. He's mowing down Nazis by the dozens. He says, this was his quote, the only thing I know is that the turret and the smoke screen provide good cover, and for the first time in 3 days, my feet are warm. So he's up there, he runs out of ammo, he finally stumbles back, he's bleeding, gets back to his men, leads them in a counterattack, and they drive the Nazis back into the woods. And that is a real American hero right there. Now, that's the kind of men that come to my mind when I think about heroes. But this afternoon, we're going to get into Hebrews chapter 11, and we're going to introduce a 12-week study. I hate to tell you this, Audie Murphy had some problems when he got back to the States, some problems adjusting. He liked to breed horses. He developed a gambling problem. He lost $250,000 at one point in time, and then he had the tax problems to go on top of it. And he would make comments that just kind of, they said that he didn't really think much about himself, if nothing else. I couldn't find anything from him where he thanked God for helping him through the battles or made any reference to anything religious. But the comments he made, they were just, they were missing something. He described calming his nerves as letting his body return to its animal instinct. That's how he would go into a battle. He said, "My numbed brain is intent only on destroying," when they asked him, "How did you make it through?" So he was a terrific fighter, but there was something missing in his heart. And today I want to look at a hero from the Bible that was a hero for a different reason. That was a hero in the heart before he was a hero on the battlefield. And if you want to look at 1 Samuel 16, we're actually going to start there. We're talking about Hebrews 11. We'll get there. I want to talk about a hero that you won't find in the list, though, to start out our series. 1 Samuel chapter 16. 1 Samuel chapter 16 is the very first time we are ever introduced to young boy David. We're told Josephus thought he was about 10 years old at this point. Scripture doesn't say. Some of the more recent commentators have thought maybe 15 years old. He's a youth. To be considered for battle in those days, you had to be 20 years old. He's younger than that. He's a youth. He's a ruddy youth. But however old he is, we see him there in 1 Samuel 16. And really look at verses 13 through 14. That kind of tells you, that catches you up. This is what's going on right now. It's somewhere towards the middle of the verse there. It says, "The Spirit of the Lord rushed upon David from that day forward, and Samuel rose up and went to Ramah. Now the Spirit of the Lord departed from Saul, and a harmful spirit from the Lord tormented him." That catches you up with the story right there. The Spirit of the Lord rushed upon David. The Spirit of the Lord left Saul. God had promised His Spirit to Saul, but now there's a hole in Saul's heart. As a matter of fact, a distressing spirit in Saul's heart. And we see here from this point forward, the only thing that will calm the hole in Saul's heart is the Spirit of the Lord that's in David's heart. Because he calls for David, "Please come play your harp for me." And whenever David would do that, he would be calmed in his spirit. So that is what's going on here in 1 Samuel 16. But you go on further into chapter 17, and you see right after we meet David, we go to the battlefield, the valley of Elah. You have the Philistines on one hill, you have the Israelites on the other hill, and in the middle we have the valley of Elah. Now, interesting fun fact. I've always kind of wondered about this connection. Why do we call the Holy Land Palestine today? Where did that come from? Interesting tie into the Philistines here. About 135 AD, the Jews were still having some skirmishes with the Romans, and they revolted against the Romans again. Remember, the Romans had destroyed Jerusalem in 70 AD, but in 135 AD, there's another revolt. And the Romans, kind of as an offense to the Jews, they rename that area by the name of the Israelites' ancient enemies, the Philistines. Palestine is a new variation of the word Philistine. Palestine, Philistine. And so you see going all the way back, even before this, back to the days of Joshua, we had a war and we had conflict between the Israelites and the Philistines, the Palestines today. Not much has changed today. You go over there and they're still fighting even today. But Judges chapter 2, this is such a crucial verse. This is where it kind of comes from. Judges 2, verses 2 through 3. God says, "You've not obeyed my voice. What is this you have done? So now I say, I will not drive them out before you, but they shall become thorns in your sides, and their God shall be a snare to you." And so there it is. Joshua could have driven them out, but because the Israelites did not completely obey his voice, from that point forward we have skirmishes between the Israelites and the Philistines. And so that's what we see here in 1 Samuel chapter 17. We have one on one hill and the other on the other hill. But this is not really what this passage is about, right? It's not about the Philistines and the Israelites. It's about the hero of the Philistines and the hero of the Israelites. On one side, we have Goliath. The text tells us that he was the champion of the Philistines. That word champion there literally means he was the man of the two middles. He was the man who went out into the middle of the two armies and by one conflict would try to decide the battle. He was a champion in every sense of the word. Scholars tell us this measurement that we have here in the text, 6 cubits, that's somewhere between 8.5 feet and 9.5 feet tall. Huge man. His chainmail, he was wearing a coat of chainmail. It weighed 200 pounds. I don't even weigh 200 pounds. Many of you don't even weigh 200 pounds. He wore chainmail that wore 200 pounds. They said he had a spear, and the shaft of that spear, it says, is like a weaver's beam. Now, I've never seen a weaver's beam. I'm sure many of you haven't either. A weaver's beam is about as thick around as the fat end of a baseball bat. So this man went into battle with a spear that was about yay thick, very, very huge spear. The tip of it was 25 pounds alone, and that's what he went out to fight with. And so he goes out there and he's cursing God morning and evening every day for 40 days, and nobody is stepping up to challenge this guy. The Israelites have no hero. We have one hero on one side, no hero on the Israelite side, and David walks up, and he's carrying a load of cheese and bread, coming to the battle lines to give it to his brothers who are old enough to go into battle. We don't believe he's yet 20 years old, maybe, but it doesn't look that way. And David comes up, and basically what David says, he hears this going on. He hears this uncircumcised Philistine cursing God. Who's going to do something about this? Who's going to do something about this guy? Look what the text says in verse 26. Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? Where's our hero? They've got a champion over there. They got a hero over there. Where's our hero? This punk has nobody to back him up. We serve the living God. Well, we have the living God behind us. Where's our hero? Do you remember 1 Samuel chapter 5? What happened when the Philistines had stolen the Ark of the Covenant? They stole it and they bring it into their shrine to the god Dagon there. And they leave it overnight and they come back in the next day. You remember what happened? Dagon was now on the floor, bowing down to the Ark of the Covenant. And so they pick it back up and they put it back on the pedestal and they leave it another night. They go back in again and it's on the floor, bowing to the Ark of the Covenant. The head cut off, the hands cut off this time. And it's so funny that the text actually adds, this is the reason the priests of Dagon don't walk on that part of the floor anymore. They saw what the living God could do. Well, and then the Philistines start trying to ship it around, like, you keep it. No, you keep it. And then they put it from city to city. And none of the cities of the Philistines want this Ark of the Covenant. Because when they take it, they start getting bulls on their skins, and mice start running over the cities there. And it's really kind of humorous what they do. They finally say, okay, we need to send this thing back. And we need to send it back with some kind of peace offering. What can we do? Well, we've been getting tumors all over ourselves. We've been getting mice running through our cities. They send it back. And can you just imagine, you're an Israelite in your Israelite city, and here comes this ox cart up the road with a box in the back. Nobody leading this thing. It's just they smack the ox on the back rear end and send it to you. And they start looking in the ox cart, and there's golden tumors and golden rats. What is all this for? The Philistines send it back with this peace offering because they saw what the living God did in their midst. And David comes to the battle line and he says, what is he doing? We serve the living God. They know that we serve the living God. Where is our hero? 2 Kings chapter 6, I kind of liken it to when Elisha is there in Dothan and his servant is with him and the Syrian army surround the whole city. And Elisha's servant looks out and he says, oh, what are we going to do? They've got us now. Elisha, what are we going to do? And Elisha says, oh, if only you could see. And he prays to the Lord, God, help him to see. Open his eyes. And the eyes of Elisha's servant are open, and he sees the chariots of fire surrounding the city. And Elisha goes out and he strikes the army blind. Oh, that he could see the living God. Oh, that he could see the armies of the living God. We serve the armies of the living God. Can't anybody go out and shut this guy up? David saw God on the battlefield that day. And he rushes out there, and I just love verses 45 through 46, back to 1 Samuel chapter 17. David sees it. David sees the living God. You come to me with a sword and with a spear and with a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, who you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you down and cut off your head. And I will give you the dead bodies of the host of the Philistines this day to the birds of the air and to the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. Oh, for men and women like David, that would show the world today that there is a God in this land by their actions, by their faith, by their vision, by their ability to see God on the battlefield. So we come to Hebrews chapter 11 today. By faith. Faith is seeing. The conviction of things not seen. David sees God on the battlefield that day, but it's not quite like Elisha's servant, where he actually sees the flaming chariots. No, what the text tells us is that David has the Spirit of the Lord on him. He's a Spirit-led man. David saw things as God saw them. David got mad at the things that made God mad. David was pleased by the things that pleased God. And when God was up there saying, "Where is my hero?" David is saying the same thing. Where is God's hero? And then it dawns on him, oh, it's me. I'm God's hero. But David saw things as God saw them. And he didn't just see the situation as God saw it. David saw God in the situation. David said, God will deliver me from this Philistine. He said, who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? He saw God's armies. These aren't just our armies. These aren't just us fighting battle and then God's over here somewhere else. These are God's army. This is God at work in the situation. He saw God in the situation. Wouldn't it be awesome if we saw the church in the exact same way? Now, this is the church of the living God. How dare Satan defy the church of the living God, which is the army of the living God? I know that my Redeemer lives, and I know that he will crush the nations with the rod of iron, that he will crush the head of the serpent underneath his heel. How dare Satan defy the church of the living God? That's the way a hero views the situation. He sees as God sees, and he sees God in the situation. And so I want to give you a tagline. This is going to be the tagline for the entire series built on what we've seen in David so far. And it's this: godly heroism. Godly heroism is fueled by godly vision. Godly heroism is fueled by godly vision. If you want to be a hero of God, if you want to be His man or His woman, you've got to see as God sees. You've got to see God in the situation. Godly heroism is fueled by godly vision. It's this thought that brings the Apostle Paul to say, for we walk by faith and not by sight. That's what he's talking about there. We walk by faith and not by sight. The Hebrew writer goes on, he reminds us in verse 3 that even what you do see, because you do see things with your eyes, but even those things that you do see, what is seen is not made out of the things that are visible. So we walk by faith and not by sight. We do have sight, but we have to be even reminded that the things we see by sight, even those things didn't come into being by things that we can see. God made everything. And so when I learn to trade my poor, pitiful, limited earthly vision for godly vision by faith, that is when I can come to perform the truly heroic. What are the giants in your life right now? What are the Goliaths in your life right now? You know those giant stresses, those giant temptations, those giant setbacks and enemies and disappointments, failures that come into your life. What is your Goliath right now? Goliath's pretty easy to understand. You know, the physical Goliath anyway. He's a big man with a big spear. That's easy to understand. But you know, we've got giants in our life today that are maybe a little bit more complicated, that come up into our finances and our careers and our workplaces and our schools. We have our own giants, don't we? And you know, they don't always say when they're coming. They just kind of show up sometimes. Oh, now Goliath's at my door. I didn't know that he was coming to my door today. He attacks you at your job, and all of a sudden there's a problem in my finances, my reputation, my way of life. And what do? Comes up into your health sometimes, and all of a sudden I've got a big decision to make with my health, or maybe I have no decision. There's a problem, it's a giant, and there's nothing I can do about it. And he's here right now. What do I do? Satan knows exactly how to come up and put just the right giant in your life. And they're not all 9-foot giants. Sometimes it's a 7-footer or a 6-footer, but it's still a giant. It's still a big problem in your life. What do you do? Well, in the next 12 weeks, we're going to be talking about how each of these heroes decided to see God in the situation and to see the situation as God saw it. But I just want to give you one example. One example from Guidepost magazine. This was a story that ran several years ago. I caught a second-hand account of this article, but I could not find the original. It is so old. But there's a story about a husband who had 2 children and a wife, and he left to go to Japan. He was in the U.S. military, and he was serving there in Japan. And he would write pretty often. The children loved to get his letters and open them. His wife loved to read those to them, and they would come pretty frequently, and they would just eat it up. But then one day the letters stopped coming. 1 week, 2 weeks, a month, no letters. And then finally a letter comes. And it was her husband, and he was writing in very endearing terms, but still not with a very happy message. He says, "No matter how I write this letter, you're going to be brokenhearted before it's over. But I will not be coming back home. I've fallen in love with another girl here, and our romance is building very strongly. We're going to be married, and please tell the children I will not be returning." And it crushed her. Of course it crushed her. She couldn't talk about it. She couldn't tell the children. They didn't know. She kept it into herself, and it just tore her up day after day. But finally, of course, one of the children came to her and says, "Mommy, is there something wrong with Daddy?" Yes, there's something wrong with Daddy. "Mommy, is Daddy not coming home?" No, Daddy's not coming home. "What happened to Daddy?" "Well, he's fallen in love with somebody else." And they took it hard. They couldn't really understand very well, but they understood Daddy was not going to be coming back home. But then one of them comes back to her and they say, "Mommy, even though Daddy doesn't love us anymore, that doesn't mean we can't love him anymore, does it?" And she said, No, I suppose we can still love Daddy even if he does not love us anymore. She said, "Mommy, could we continue to write to Daddy and ask him to keep writing to us?" And that hurt. But she said, of course we can do that. And so he did. And he told them all about his life, and the letters kept coming. They were about to have children. They had gotten married, and he continued to write to them. It was his 15-year-old servant girl that he had fallen in love with. But the letters keep coming, and then one day a letter comes, and it's kind of hard to understand. He writes to her, and he says, "I'm sorry to be writing this way to you, but I've found out that I have cancer, and I'm not going to live very long. I do not have very much money to support my family because I've forfeited my pension with the military. Would you consider it possible every month to save up some money after I die and send it to my family here to help them?" Now, that's a low blow, isn't it? That's terrible. That's hard. It's incomprehensible that someone could request such a thing of another person. But she kept on replaying that line in her mind over and over again. Just because he doesn't love us anymore, does that mean that we can't love him anymore? And so she wrote him back and she said, "Look, if we had money to send, we would, but you understand, you left us and we don't have very much money ourselves. We can't do that for you, but here's what I can do. If this would help you, I will do this. If you would like to send them over here, if you'd like for us to teach them the language, help them to get employed, and we would even take them into our home, if that would help you when you die, then we will do that." And that's what happened. That's what he did, and that's what she did. The article ends this way. Pay very close attention to this. The article ends this way. She said, "I have 2 choices. I can either look back upon my life and curse that man every moment for what he had done to me with sheer anger and find myself molested twice over. Or I can thank God for giving me the privilege of shining his light in a very dark tunnel in this world." I want to read that one more time. I have 2 choices. I can either look back upon my life and curse that man every moment for what he'd done to me with sheer anger and find myself molested twice over. You know, there's a lot of times that we deserve to be mad. There's a lot of times that things happen and nobody would fault you for being angry at the world, but it just molests you twice over. You just go through it one more time than you actually had to. You live it again. I'd be molested twice over. Or I can thank God for giving me the privilege of shining His light in a very dark tunnel in this world. Nobody would have faulted her if she had not done what she did. But the reason that a story like this ascribes to heroism is because here we have a strong woman with the help of her children who sees as God sees. Romans chapter 12 and verse 21, do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. She saw God in the situation. She saw as God sees, and she impacted lives for God in the way that she faced down her giant. As you face down the giants in your life, there's many times where you come to a decision where nobody would fault you for making a decision that you don't have to make. She didn't have to live with that. She didn't have to see that every day. She didn't have to invite that into her home, but she did. There's so many decisions that you could make in your life that nobody would fault you if you didn't make that decision. But can I encourage you to reach for the heroic? Ask the question. You don't have to do it, but just you deserve to hear the answer from yourself to the question, what would a hero do? What would a hero of God do in this situation? I'm not asking you, just ask the question first and then make the decision of whether or not you're going to do it. But can I encourage you to reach towards the heroic? What is God doing? Or what can God do in this situation to bring glory to Himself? That is a hero's question. I look very much forward to exploring these heroes as we go week by week. We're going to see people that did things that we never would have thought to have done. And it's just wonderful that God in His wisdom has put this passage of the Bible here for us. But this afternoon, there may be some here that have not yet addressed the giant of sin in their life. Sin is a giant. Sin is something that comes up against you that just like that 8.5, 9.5 foot giant, you're not quite equipped for. Not quite up to the task to beat on your own. And were it not for the power of the living God, you would stand no chance. Sin is a destroyer, and you are a young boy. I am a young 10, 15-year-old boy up against a boy who's been fighting since his youth. Satan's been fighting since his youth, hasn't he? For thousands and thousands of years. We stand no chance. We don't. Not under our own power anyway. But open your eyes and see God on that battlefield. See God in the situation and see the situation as God sees it and yield your life to Him. Say, Lord, I can't do it. I can't do it, Lord, but You can do it. And You can do it through me. Tonight, if you're not yet a Christian, if you've not yet handed your life over to Him, I want to encourage you to yield to Him in faith. That He is the only one that can save you from your sins. Repent, come to Him, confess Him as who He is, be baptized for the remission of your sins. If you have that need or you need to come and restore your life, if you have any need, please come while we stand and while we sing.